I'm Graham,
And I'm Corinne,
and
and
we
we
are
are too
too
talented.
talented. We're getting so good at that. Uh,
It's way easier if you're together.
in person,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, welcome to Too Talented. We are going to today be talking about some best practices for managers and companies who are working with their internal talent acquisition teams as well as agency recruiting teams. Both are pretty important within the hiring process. At least we think so.
Since our jobs depend
Since
on it.
that's our job. So today we're going to be talking more kind of about those best practices. This is kind of focused towards hiring managers, although you as a candidate can listen to as well, so you can hear kind of some behind the scenes types of things that recruiters and talent acquisition people will talk about, or what they will talk about with their hiring managers to give you a clearer picture kind of what goes on behind the scenes for hiring.
BTS.
Oh, behind the scenes. I don't
Yeah.
know if I've ever heard BTS.
What? Come
I
on.
don't know.
BTS. Get with the no, Graham. It's
God,
BTS.
is that Gen Z language?
Probably. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Oh, awesome. Well, Corinne, we've had some busy times over the last week or two. What's going on with you?
A lot.
Yeah.
Went to the sales kickoff for the company I'm working with. So I got to go to Greenville, South Carolina, Greenville, as it's called, not Greenville, Greenville, and spend some time with the leadership team and the executive team out there and hear all about the sales initiatives, which is awesome and hugely important for kind of my role in helping them find the right talent for what they're trying to do this year. So that was really fun, and it was actually very cold in Greenville. Um, it I tried to run a few times. Kind of happened in very short stints here and there, but it was very, very busy. But I think it was a really great thing and important for kind of helping me going forward. But then I came back and we finished Burrito League. It was the last day, Burrito League Castle Rock. Super fun. Saturday was the last day, and then Sunday we had a award ceremony, kind of celebration happy hour. And so kind of just jumped right back into the running stuff. And so on that weekend, I ran 16 or 18 miles on the burrito segment on Saturday with everybody. And Sunday, I went and got on the trails and did some downhill stimulus. Our trails are still dry. So I was able to go out with Russ and Justin, who are both running the 50K to Mount Falcon.
Black Canyon.
They're running the Black Canyon 50K. I'm running the 100K, and we went to Mount Falcon and did got some good vert and some good, practice on rocky terrain for the last long runs of the block.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is what's going on, I guess, with me amongst parenting and all that other stuff. How about you?
Yeah, busy as well. I did a lot of segments on the Burrito League. I ran 315 miles or so
Every single one of your runs was
on
on
a
it.
quarter-mile segment, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I went out on the trails yesterday and like my whole body was like, ooh, yeah, I'm not used to running downhill quickly. So I need
You got 2 weeks to get ready to
gotta
pace.
bring it on back, which I'll be there. I'll be there. From a work front, it's going well. I picked up 2 new job orders this week that I've been working on. Video game developers, which is kind of an interesting skill set that I know a little bit about. I've done a couple in the past. So I'm excited to kind of get that going. And I've got a couple of other leads on jobs that are upcoming that are more in the finance realm. Yeah, starting to develop a little bit of consistency, which is excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah. Awesome. So this episode comes directly from a lot of our experience in terms of trying to develop ways for hiring managers to really maximize their relationship either with their agency recruiter or with their talent acquisition. And it's a really important thing to have the process go smoothly. There's a lot of communication or miscommunication that can come up in the process that can slow things down, make it chaotic, make it feel unorganized. So we would like to kind of talk through some of the things that will help it go smoothly.
And I think in my experience, just from the internal talent acquisition side, because it's been many, many years since I was on the agency side, but I think that it is, the benefit and the value out of having partners from either an agency or an internal recruiting group help you is that you as a hiring manager are, you have a job, you have day-to-day responsibilities outside of recruiting. And so you use these people to help you keep your hiring pipeline moving and be the almost broker of the deals between you and the candidates. And so, I think you got to think of them as a tool. And we're going to go through, kind of what that means. But just like we don't really say we know we're experts in, say we're hiring a finance role, we don't say we're experts in finance. We can speak it to the degree that we need to. Hiring managers are not experts in recruiting and driving the process, or in sales or in negotiation. They're not supposed to be. So let your partners do what they are good at and what they've been trained to do. And that's kind of, yeah, I think where you need to start.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think a good example, in our first kind of bullet here is treat your recruiting kind of people like partners in the process. So, a company reached out to me this week asking for help with a specific skill set. They were able to provide a job description and kind of a project plan in writing, which I was able to read beforehand. And then I'd set up a call and we talked for about 30 minutes about the ins and outs of the position, specific questions I had, what was really important, what we could skip, budget for the position, when they needed to hire, et cetera. And that really clear communication set up an opportunity for me, I think, to be successful in getting candidates to them really fast. And it turns out they need them faster than I was originally guessing. So I kind of dropped everything and got after it. But if I didn't know that, I wouldn't have necessarily done that. So this is going to allow me to get candidates to them in the right amount of time for them to be able to bring them on very quickly. So kind of that transparency is really important. I asked them for their availability for interviews this week, so I've got that already. So that kind of accountability of having a time set that I can put candidates into is really important. So kind of being a trusted partner and feeling like a trusted partner, they did a really good job of that, and I think it'll help for outcomes.
Yeah, I like that.
You know,
Um, yeah, recruiters don't know everything. They're working on multiple jobs, different skill sets, different functions. So you have to be communicative. That's your next bullet is recruiters aren't mind readers. Um, we only know what you tell us, but a good recruiter or agency or internal recruiter will listen and ask the right questions to make sure that they know how to, properly navigate the process.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think from a communication standpoint, there's been a number of times where I've had hiring managers who are really busy who have just say, "Hey, here's the description. Just, find me anybody who seems to fit that." And it's like, yeah, I can, but like I don't know like the type of personality. Usually the job description is kind of short. So am I going to develop, the person with the right culture? Am I going to find the right must-haves? Are there some nice to haves that I could be looking for? There's just a number of things that, really strong communication, setting up a call to begin, I think is really important.
I think so too. And take that as an opportunity to almost practice because those are things that you're going to get asked potentially by the candidates. And so it's
Right.
a way for you to verbally, talk through the position itself as almost a practice for future conversations. You're gonna have to be able to articulate the value proposition, the role itself, and so you can use the initial kickoff conversation as a starting point for that and a way to practice. A lot of times, hiring managers, if they're not, you know, in sales functions or in executive or normally very outward facing, you know, positions, might not be super comfortable presenting about the role, and so this is a good way for you to kind of practice doing that.
Yeah, and I think also like that starts to build a little bit of a relationship between the manager and either talent acquisition or an agency. Being able to spend a few minutes with them talking kind of gets them an idea of, well, who are you really working with here? It kind of gets away from the transactional nature sometimes that's caused by these positions, just saying, hey, go find me somebody. So I think that's a really important piece.
Yeah, one example comes to mind. I had a call the other day with a CFO, and we were looking through resumes together at the same time on a call. And, in the future, hopefully I won't have to do that as much with this
Yeah.
individual, but I just met them. I'm just getting to know them, just getting to know this position and the company. So I appreciated him taking the time to walk through it with me. But as we're walking through them, one of them, I don't think this is really great fit. And I said, okay, why? And he said, well, good on you for asking me why. I appreciate you asking me why. And I'm like, well, if I don't understand what you like and don't like about this profile, I'm not going to be able to hone in on what's ideal. And so it's like, don't be afraid to ask those questions or seem like, I guess this is from the talent acquisition or agency side, don't be afraid to ask the stupid question. What makes you not like this resume? Because you guys have to figure out like what good looks like before you can do anything, and before it's going to save you a lot of time later to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that 30 minutes that recruiter and the hiring manager get together and talk about something like this can save days or weeks of wasted time
Mhm.
where they're looking for the wrong profile, sending the wrong thing over and over. They don't get the detailed feedback to know it's wrong or why it's wrong. I mean, then your question why is so important. Why is this not the fit based on what we were talking about? Sounds like it should be the fit, so why is it not? So kind of that investment of 30 minutes could save a lot of time later.
Yeah.
Awesome. Next one, managers giving clear directives. So I think, part of this is managers being decisive. Sometimes I find that managers are like, yeah, they're pretty good, but I'd like to see some comparisons. Okay. You know, what is it that you're looking to improve upon with this candidate? If it's not, if this candidate's not ringing the bell, I have never had someone hire this candidate is pretty good, but I'd like to see some others. No one ever comes back to that
Mhm.
candidate. So
Mhm.
just cut them loose.
Mhm.
I'd much rather have that, cut and be done with that candidate instead of kind of trying to keep them warm, and they're going to be asking me for updates for the next 3 weeks, and
Yeah.
they're probably not getting the job. So it's just a challenging thing. So being decisive, I think, is really important.
I think you can be decisive from the recruiting and talent and agency or talent acquisition side too.
Yeah.
If you speak with a candidate and maybe they looked really good on paper. I mean, I just had this. uh, I'm not going to be afraid to say, okay, yes, this person checked all the boxes from a skill set standpoint and experience standpoint. I have questions about the cultural fit or the kind of the personality fit. And and so maybe I'm going to present them forward, but I need to call out that there might be some things that aren't aligned. And so it's like, you need to also be decisive. If you talk to somebody and you know, they just rub you the wrong way. If they rub you the wrong way in the first interview, they might be really hard to work with. And
Yeah.
therefore, you need to listen to that and kind of, I guess, own and be confident in then that's the value that you bring that otherwise it wouldn't be possible if somebody just read a resume, and you're going to save that hiring manager time by saying, hey, I just don't think this person is going to be great.
Yep,
So
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I talked to someone last night. I had kind of a late night pre-screen with them to talk about a
hopefully
company.
they don't listen to this podcast.
They may not know. Um, but I did not connect with them either. I found them very, very dismissive. They were kind of once again, kind of treating this like very transactional from the candidate side, and kind of held me at arm's distance. Didn't really want to give me much in their background or anything like that. And so, like, I kind of hung up with them, saying, "Well, I'm not going to pursue, anything with you because, if this is how you treat me, how are you to work with?
Hmm.
How are you going to be in terms of me representing you as a good candidate at this company? I don't know if I buy into the fact that you would be really good at what you do based on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that I've had happen from a hiring manager standpoint is they'll send me, partial information. Oh, I don't have a job description for this, but basically we're looking for
Mm-hmm.
a senior accountant. Just go find a senior accountant, good skill set and personality fit that fits my team, and we'll start to kind of interview candidates. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's such a broad thing, right? A senior accountant, like how senior? Do they need a CPA? Is it going to be, general ledger, or is it going to be more more CPA type work where they're going to need to do technical, like, so what is this?
Hmm.
So having that partial information can really lead you on a wild goose chase, because that opens up, if we're looking for senior accountant and we're in Denver, so we're looking in the Denver area, and that's all I've got to go on, that's going to bring up 4,000 candidates. So how do I narrow that down and figure out who I should be talking to?
Hmm.
So getting more information than just kind of a simple, hey, we're looking for this and go find it.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Gotta give us all the information that we need to be successful.
Yeah. The next one is interview process. Trying to get an understanding beforehand of what this interview process is going to be like. Yes, there's always going to be something that pops up. Executive jumps up and is like, you know what? I want to interview the top candidate for a final. Okay. Not much we can do to kind of predict that. But thinking through beforehand and talking to your talent acquisition partner or kind of recruiting partner, who needs to be involved? Is it just the hiring manager? Is it someone else on the team who's maybe a subject matter expert that needs to be involved? Is there a higher level person that needs to interview this person as well? Who are all the people that need to be involved? Does everybody want to jump on a call at once and do a single interview? Is there somebody who wants to start and then do a second interview? So really kind of honing in on that detail can help the process move smoothly. The last thing you want to do is like, oh, we'll just figure it out as we go. It's like, you're 5 interviews deep with a candidate, and then someone's like, this isn't the right person, and you're like a month and a half in. So all this wasted time. So coming up with the interview schedule and who's going to be involved beforehand is really important.
It's also one of the first questions that people are going to ask your agency recruiter or talent acquisition recruiter once they're in the process is, what does the interview process look like?
Yeah.
What does the timeline look like? And you need to know that, and you both need to be on the same page about it so that they don't get different answers from you, and then the hiring manager, when they interview with them and they get asked the same question, because that looks really bad. Like, the internal communication
Yeah.
stinks at this company if you give 2 different answers on what the interview process is. So that is also can be reflective of, how the candidate assesses how the company works. It can kind of bleed into that. I had this exact thing just happen. Again, that CFO I'm working with, I'm hiring a director of financial planning and analysis. And I said, okay, we're at this point where we have some candidates in the pipeline. They're going to be interviewing with you next. What I was going to ask, what should the interview process look like? And instead, in my email, I said, here is a suggestion on the interview process for the role. Let me know if you want to change it. Because I wanted to control that we don't have 8 different interviews for this. It's a senior level role. But guess what? We're going to lose candidates if we have too long of a process.
Right.
And do 8 people need to interview this? Not that that was going to happen necessarily, but I wanted to also have some influence in saying, okay, well, I think this is maybe what I would suggest the process look like. And I sent it over, and it's 3 rounds: CEO, CFO, and then in person with the CFO and maybe some of the other accounting groups. Boom. I got a response. That looks great. Let's go with that. So,
Yeah.
again, but I really appreciate the CFO letting me suggest and kind of guide that part of it. And that
Yeah.
is him being a good partner to recruiting, and not being over controlling of, something part of this whole plan. Like, he'll be controlling when it comes to who's the right candidate for the
Right.
job. He doesn't need to be overbearing and say, this is what the interview process should look like, and it should entail, all these people. Because the more people you get in the process, the more opinions you have about the person, and the more complicated it gets to make a decision.
For sure. And I think also thinking through, what level are you talking about here? Is if it's an executive level, obviously there's a lot of different parties that, are important and stakeholders within this. There might even be, a private equity that needs to jump in, or an investor group, or those types of things. But if we're talking about, like, let's say we're talking about a contractor who's going to come in for a 6-month project, maybe a 30-minute interview is all you need to do, because if this person does this for a living and is a contractor, well, if they're not a fit, you just, cut them loose and find another contractor to kind of get slid into the process. So it's a different,
Uh-oh,
what?
I'm a contractor.
Right.
If they're not a good
Yeah.
fit, just
If
let
they're
them
not a
go.
good fit, you just cut them loose because that's what contracts all about. So, but I think that kind of should, like, I've had companies do a 4-step interview process with a contract position. It's like, guys, bring them in, test them out. They're good, keep them. And if they're not, don't.
Mhm.
But if we're talking about, someone who's going to be backfilling a really important position, yeah, I get, multiple steps in the interview process. But thinking through what this role really is should kind of dictate how much of an interview process there should be.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome.
So feedback is the next kind of bucket, and I think that, that one just goes without saying. We've been talking about it all along, but throughout the entire process, as a hiring manager, please give feedback. Usually give it right after an interview
Yeah,
happens because it's fresh in your mind. Take notes. If you are, you could ask your recruiter or talent acquisition person if they have a form that if you need a tool or guidance, like ask them for some kind of like questionnaire format that they could put the question or the feedback into, or just correspond via email and make sure you're making notes, but give feedback right away while it's fresh in your mind, and then let that talent acquisition um, or agency individual gather all that feedback and keep track of it for you.
Yeah, and especially if there's something very specific that is quote unquote a deal killer for you that you hear from a candidate. Oh, this candidate said this, and that's a deal killer for me. Make sure you communicate that because that person can then use that as a screening question later
Hmm.
so they don't waste your time introducing candidates that would either say that or have that in their background. And I've run into a number of things where a manager says, hey, I've seen people with this type of experience, which is similar to what I'm looking for, but it's not exactly the same. However, I don't want those people because of X. They don't have quite the right skill set. In fact, on the call that I had the other day, a guy mentioned a specific type of background that he didn't want to see because he'd hired people like that in the past, and they just didn't quite get what they were trying to do. So it was one of the things that I screened out as I was looking for candidates, that I didn't send messages to people who had that experience.
Hmm. Yeah. A good recruiter will ask the hiring manager for the feedback as well and push them for it. Equally, they will go talk to the candidate after the
Yeah.
interview and make sure that they communicate the feedback from the candidate to the hiring team.
For sure. And I think, sometimes you could, as a manager, say, hey, I don't want this to be shared with the candidate. This is only for you. And that's totally legit.
Sure.
There may be times where they're like, hey, I ran into this and I don't really want to tell the person, or hey, the person smelled bad. And unfortunately, that's going to be weird here. It's like, there could be stuff where you don't want just say it to your agency partner or your internal recruiter. Hey, don't share this with the person, but here's why. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Awesome.
And then that just keeping that feedback loop going helps everybody involved keep driving the process. I mean, that's number one thing that recruiters and agencies help with is keeping things moving quickly and driving the whole process. And so, if you don't do that, you are just holding up making a decision. You're holding up the entire process. You're risking losing candidates. You're risking um, you're risking kind of giving this picture of how the company operates, that
Right.
it doesn't move quickly. Like, everything that you're doing in this process, is a reflection of kind of how that person's going to be, what experience they're going to have working at the company. And so you got to kind of think of it that it is more than just this single interaction. It is also an example of your brand and your company reputation out in the market.
Well, and that reputation is really important. So, for example, I was talking to a candidate the other day who is in process with a specific company that I know, because I've heard from multiple other companies, has like a 3-month interview process.
Mhm.
So when they told me, "Oh, I'm in process here," I'm like, "No worries." I'm like, "Would you stop that process if I can get you a job beforehand?" And they said, "Absolutely." And so I know that this company is going to move very slowly, and
Mhm.
that's their prerogative. But anytime a candidate's interviewing with them, and I'm actually kind of excited about it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to steal somebody from these guys because I know they're not going to move fast enough.
Mhm.
And they've got that reputation nationally. So, that goes pretty far in terms of the spread of your probably negative reputation for how slowly it moves.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like Amazon, Google, they just as a reputation have very, very long hiring cycles.
Yep.
And maybe they can because a lot of people just want to like kind of show that they've worked for that company.
Yeah,
But it is an advantage, if you're a small, nimble company that can move quickly, you have an advantage there.
absolutely. So I think, to sum things up, what a great partnership looks like. I think mutual trust and an investment of time upfront to give someone enough information that they can move forward
Mhm.
correctly and not waste your time sending bad candidates or have you interview people who you're like, oh, this just isn't the right fit. Spend that time early, you won't waste it later. And then being honest and direct in terms of the conversations you're having, making sure that you're decisive with the feedback, solid communication, get back to people in a timely manner. Those are the kind of the important communication pieces. Everybody's busy, but if you're able to prioritize something, so like I always have this kind of funny saying is anytime I hear someone say, "Oh, I'm really, really busy and I don't have time to do this," it's like, no one's that busy. You mean you're not prioritizing this particular thing. It's not busy. It's just not a priority. And that's fine. Just make sure that you communicate that.
Yeah, and part of your value is that, well, the quicker that we hire this person, the more time you're going to get back because
Right.
this is part of what's taking up your time is that you don't have the 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 individuals you need to be doing all of this work, and therefore, it should be a priority because this is going to save you and your team time in the long run if we can get this hired quickly.
And you can still be very selective. I mean, you can review 10 candidates if you want to. And, if you put that up front, you want to see a lot of resumes to start so you can kind of narrow down the focus. If I know that going in, I have no problem with that. I can just use that in my recruiting to come up with enough candidates to give you enough choices to look at and then cut it down. I mean, in an ideal world, I'm going to send you 3 people and I'm hoping one of those 3 or 2 of those 3 is very worthy of a final interview. But if you're someone who needs to see a lot of choices, that's fine if I know that going in. So having that clear communication is important.
Yeah. So to sum it up, hiring is a team sport. Running is a team sport. If you don't have a crew and or possibly pacers, controversial topic, you might be at a disadvantage, especially in an ultra. So use these people to your advantage. Make it a team effort. That also builds culture and camaraderie within the company, and it builds this kind of yeah, it builds this atmosphere that you're all working toward a common goal. Like
Yep.
it's a lot easier. I was just at the sales conference, and one of the big comments was like, "Don't lose alone. Win together, but don't lose alone." Meaning, if you're gonna lose something, lose as a team.
Yeah.
Don't be out there on an island by yourself trying to do this. Your team and your talent acquisition partners are there for a reason. So use them, and it's a lot more fun to then find the right person, bring them in. You did this together. It's a win for the company. And it was something done, using everybody's skill sets and expertise together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one last thing is when you're talking to a candidate and you've had, a really kind of deep call with the hiring manager, you either know the company from working there or you've worked with them in the past. The more information you know about the hiring manager, the company, all those types of things, gives you a little bit of a level of expertise. And I think, especially for top candidates who are really picky with the jobs that they look at, interviews that they take, those types of things, someone who really is knowledgeable about the hiring manager and the company is really important. So I think spending that time and allowing that person to become knowledgeable about you as a hiring manager and the company overall is an important step and will help you attract the right candidates.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on Two Talented Podcast. And
Good luck in your hiring.
good luck in your hiring. And if we can help in any way, please reach out.
See you next time.